We're in the 4 o'clock class going on this afternoon, and Harry made a good observation about examples. Said that we all need them because we want to look up to people because we see examples of how we should behave. It's pretty obvious, but it's the truth. We all need those kind of people in our lives, and we need them in our everyday life, the people that we actually can see and touch and feel, and we also need them from the Bible perspective of how they behaved so we can know how we function. That's one of the questions I get asked a lot is, okay, now we're Christians, what do we do? How is it that we are supposed to live? Is it just evangelism all the time? Is it just worship all the time? Is it just Bible reading all the time? And of course, none of the answers is all the time. But we're Christians all the time, right? So I wanted to take a look this evening at the example that we have of those in Thessalonica and the three things that they did, the faith, the hope, and the love that were demonstrated, and talk about that for ourselves as a focus, as something that we can look forward to as well. And I think this applies to all of us. It applies, we always can get something more out of this. This is not a lesson saying that we are lacking in these things, but to encourage and spur us on to look and consider where we are, what we're doing, what we're involved in, and how we can grow where we are. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that you can always add more. You can always do something different. But sometimes it's a matter of not adding more, but actually doing what you're supposed to be doing, or doing what you are doing, improving in that area. There's always room for growth in anything that you're doing. And so it's a kind of a toss-up. Where do we grow? Do we grow in the sense of looking at our activities and improving them, or are we looking at growth as far as looking at adding more activities? And that really is a personal decision that we all have to make. But in any case, we can continue to grow and improve and add to who we already are. What are the things that we're already doing? Even if it's not adding new things, it could be just adding material. It could be adding abilities and skills for the things that we're already doing. I want you to notice what he says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 3. This is the basis for this lesson. It says, remembering without ceasing your work of faith, labor of love, and patience of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ in the sight of our God and Father. This is what he's saying in verse 2. He gives thanks to God always for them, making mention of them in his prayers. So he says in our prayers. So he's mentioning them in prayers, and the reason he's mentioning them in prayers, or the way that he's mentioning them, or the reason that he's driven to remember them in prayers, is because of what he remembers about them. He unceasingly remembers the three things that we're talking about: faith, the hope, and the love. And those, incidentally, are three things that Paul mentions in almost all of his letters, maybe all the letters he writes. It's one of those trios that go together very well: faith, hope, and love. And they fit according to the gospel. They fit the Christian life, the lifestyle that we have. And these are things that we should all be aspiring to, growing in our lives. There's one thing I know, is that if we don't grow, we shrink. If we don't challenge ourselves to improve, we don't just sit idly. There's no such thing in the spiritual realm. Yes, maybe for a little while. And we may be going through things where we have to stop and we have to focus on something else for a little while, but eventually we start stagnating if we're not growing. And so it's up to us to challenge ourselves to put one step in front of the other. And that's one of the most difficult things as Christians. Wouldn't it be so much nicer if we had someone who could come to us on a daily basis and say, hey, look, here are the list of things that you need to work on today. And we could look at that and say, okay, great, I think I'm going to do that, and just go out and do those things. That would be nice. Maybe it would be comforting in a sense, because then there wouldn't be as much worry about, okay, where am I supposed to grow? But God doesn't operate that way. He's allowed you to decide what's important to you. He's allowed you to decide where your priorities are going to be. And as I've said so many times in the last almost 3 years that I've been here, the day of eternity, the day of judgment, is going to show you more about yourself than you've ever dreamed, unless you already understand who you are. It's going to show you the things that you prioritized. It's going to show you the things that you thought were more important. All kinds of things are going to show up. And we fool ourselves sometimes in thinking that things are important because we verbally say them, we acknowledge them. But if we look at faith, hope, and love and analyze those, we'll learn so much more about ourselves. And hopefully we can grow in that area. So let's think about that. The first one is, he mentions their work of faith. And look in verses 6 through 10. It says, "You have become followers of us and of the Lord, having received the word in much affliction with joy in the Holy Spirit." We'll talk about that affliction in just a minute. But he's talking about the fact that they've received it and they've received the word with joy, so that you became examples to all in Macedonia and Achaia who believe. In all of their region where they were examples to all the believers in that area, in that region. "For from you the word of the Lord has sounded forth, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, but also in every place. Your faith toward God has gone out, so that we do not need to say anything. For they themselves declare concerning us what manner of entry we had to you, and how you turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God, and to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, even Jesus, who delivers us from the wrath to come." We see these people were workers. They put work into their religion. They believed in doing things and activities. The word work here just means, it's not necessarily talking about a job, although it would apply. It's talking about activities, things that they were doing, involved in. They were very active in their faith. And we can see people who were active in the church in the first century, and we can see people who weren't active in the church. And these are the people who were active. And in fact, they were so active that the people around knew all about them. They knew about how they turned away from idols. How did they know that? Because they were out telling people. They were out teaching people. They were out instructing people. They were out helping other people and doing good as they were taught to do. Now, sometimes we get a little bit confused in what we're supposed to be doing, and we think that the only thing we need to do is go out and tell people that Jesus is the Christ and they need to be baptized to be saved. Of course, we need to cover those things. But there are a lot of things that we need to cover in dealing with people and helping them through the problems and the challenges of life. And sometimes that means that we're telling them what we've done, how we've overcome, how we've gotten out of the situations that we found ourselves in. And of course, it comes back to Jesus. And this is exactly what they were doing. They were going around telling people, this is where we were, and this is where we are, and this is how we got there, and you can be there too. And in doing that, they're putting in the work. And it's amazing how quickly these things spread. You know, if one or two people are telling as many people as they can, you're only going to reach so many people. But if you are one or two people, or we got 30 people here, and we're reaching and talking to as many people as we can, and we're teaching those people to talk to other people, we're going to make a huge impact. That's exactly what happened in the book of Acts. We see the church exploding because they were putting in the work. They understood what it was that was required of them. And so they themselves, everywhere Paul would go and his entourage would go, they would run into people and they would talk about their trip, where they'd been, what they'd been doing. And they would go and talk about those in Thessalonica. And they'd say, you don't have to tell us anything about those people in Thessalonica. We heard all about them. How did you hear about them? Because they're telling us. They've already been here. Now, could you imagine if you're a missionary and you're going from town to town teaching the gospel to different people, and you come to a town where you've never been before, and you find out that there's already Christians who have been there evangelizing and trying to convert people? That makes the job so much easier, doesn't it? You're going to walk into so many great opportunities because of that. And the work, notice what it says, the work of faith. It's what their belief pushed them to do. They believed, therefore they did. You know the thing about this, when you say work of faith, when you believe, therefore you do, that helps your belief grow even more. That's the way Christianity works, is it builds upon itself. Anything that's worthwhile does that. So if it's worth the effort, which it is, you put in the effort and you gain from it even more. It's the seed principle all over again. You plant one seed and many seeds grow. And that's how Christianity grows, within our own hearts and within the communities, that kind of thing. So we see an example here of people who were eager, who were zealous. They wanted to do good, as he said in Titus chapter 2, that we are people who were created to be zealous of good works, to go about and doing good. That's the summary of what Jesus spent his life doing. He went around doing good. And we go around doing good. And we can be very specific about what that means, but in generalities, we're doing what is right. We're doing what is good and proper. It's not just about stopping sin, it's about putting on attributes of God. And the more we grow in our hearts and spirits, the more you start to recognize that you can't really grow without interacting with other people. And the more you interact with other people, the more you grow as well, and you help them to grow, and it builds on itself. So we need to make sure we're seeing these people for who they are and the fact that they had such great faith that it put them to work. But then he also talks about the next little part of this is their labor of love. And the word labor is a more intense word. It really kind of implies suffering. And we can see that they did suffer. We'll talk about that in just a minute back in the book of Acts. But the idea of suffering is implied. It's not necessarily always suffering. It's not that they did some things and suffered as a result of that. It's the work that they're doing was toilsome work. It was difficult work. They were putting in effort. They were, if you were going to put it in terms of a body, they were putting their back into it. It's like the difference between plowing up a garden with a hoe and plowing it up sitting on a tractor. So they were putting in effort, difficult work to do the things that God wanted them to do. And of course, Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10 tells us that we should be involved in that kind of activity. And he says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith. They did their labor because of the great love that they had. So their love grew. You know what happens when you act and you do things that are laborious and toilsome because you love someone? Your love grows. You can't help it. It's going to grow. So if you are actively pursuing things that are difficult to do, and you're doing them because you love other people, we're talking about all kinds of things, then your love for those people will grow. Your love in general will grow. It doesn't always result in the things that we want to see happen, but it is always going to benefit us when we're striving to grow and striving to learn and striving to improve ourselves and doing the toilsome work. What does toilsome work mean as a Christian? Well, it's obviously not about plowing fields, but it could be. It's obviously not about doing difficult manual labor, but it could be, because what do? We do good. We help people who are in need. We find places where people are having troubles and difficulties, and it may be that we help someone who's stranded on the side of the road. It may be that we're helping someone move. There's all kinds of good things that we can do. There are also some even more important things that we could be doing that are difficult on us and toilsome for us, and we've all been through those. It's helping someone who is having difficulties in their marriages, helping them put the pieces back together, who have lost family members, who are falling apart and they need help of someone to put their arm around them and say, let's go through this together. Those are difficult things. It's about helping someone perhaps who is having a feud with someone else, to try to go and mediate, to try to help them put the pieces together of their friendship and to build bridges and to build peace, because this is what Christians do. We do good. Is teaching them the gospel going to help that? Absolutely, it's going to help. And we help them figure out how to fix their lives, not just say, if you'll just become a Christian, everything will take care of itself. Yes, becoming a Christian is what they need in their life more than anything. But becoming a Christian means that they're going to figure out how to fix the problems that they're facing. Becoming a Christian means that they're going to figure out how to fix their relationships and to deal with the difficult things in their lives. Instead of, sometimes I think we give people the impression that once you become a Christian, all that kind of stuff, it just goes away. And obviously it doesn't. Look at the things that it mentions here, how that they turned in verse 9. It says, they themselves declare concerning us what manner of entry we had to you and how you turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God. Imagine growing up believing that some rock outside your house was going to cause it to rain if you prayed to it. And then Paul coming in and saying, you need to give up the idols. Imagine what it would take for you to say, okay, it's not something that's going to come easily. It's something that they had to be convinced of. Paul did miracles to prove himself. He would reason with them. We can see what he did in Acts 17 when he talked to those people at Mars Hill. He's reasoning through this process. He's helping them to think differently. He's tackling the difficult things that they're facing. And it's something that some of those people probably easily gave up those things. There were other people that had a very difficult time changing and becoming Christians. So do we abandon the ones that have a difficult time, or do we help them? It's a great question. It depends on whether we love them or not, right? So we find opportunities to do good, and especially those who are the household of faith. And sometimes that is difficult work. Let's not shy away from it, though. Look at the example that we have of these people who did difficult things and made a huge impact because of the work that they did. And the last one here, the patience of hope. This one is the idea of patience is carrying a load. And that's a really good way of describing it. You're putting a load on your back and you're carrying it. It implies difficulty. It implies perseverance. And for me, this is one of the most challenging ideas of Christianity. Well, it's easy to put on the load for a little while. I might go to church and be encouraged. I'm going to pop that thing on my back and carry it for as long as I can. But then it's so easy to put it down. I'm just done. It's so easy to start thinking about how difficult it is and how many challenges I'm facing. And I can't carry this load because I'm facing too many things in my own life. And on and on and on. We can make all kinds of excuses and reasons. But as a child of God, there are times when we may not be able to carry some loads. But our job is to make sure that we go to God and have Him help us carry the load. And He will do that. But we don't carry it by putting it down all the time. We pick it up and we put it on and we willingly go into it. Why? Because of our hope that we have. We have something that we're anticipating that should push us. I think sometimes we forget where we're going. We forget sometimes what's waiting for us at the end of this journey. Because if we understood where we're going to be, we wouldn't have near as much of a problem carrying the loads that we're carrying, and even helping other people carry their loads. Oh, but if we forget where we're going, we forget why we're doing it, we forget then we forget why it's worth carrying it. We don't have much of hope of anything. And it's almost a guarantee that if you lose your hope, you're going to lose your salvation. It's almost a guarantee because you can't do it by yourself. None of us can. You need God, you need each other, and you need something to look forward to. That's why the Hebrew writer says that we have hope as an anchor for our soul. It's what keeps us in line. It's what keeps us going. It's what motivates us and inspires us and pushes us. Look in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 6. It says, you became followers of us and of the Lord, having received the word in much affliction with joy in the Holy Spirit. The affliction and the joy went together. Why? Because they had hope. They're looking forward to something. In verse 10 it says, and to wait for His Son from heaven, whom He raised from the dead, even Jesus, who delivers us from the wrath to come. So they had hope that they can escape the wrath to come, that they would look for and wait for His Son from heaven. The idea is not that they should sit down and do nothing. That's not the idea of waiting. The idea of waiting there is persevering, knowing that you have something coming. There is coming a time when your load is not going to be carried anymore. When you see that when you hear that trumpet sound and you see Jesus coming again and everything is going to be dissolved, you don't have to worry about carrying a load anymore. But until that time, we've got to keep going, because if we do not keep going with what God wants us to do, we're not going to make it. It's not about working our way to heaven. It's about being faithful to God. And we've got to be faithful. What alternative do we have? What else is there? I've dealt with people, and even my own family members, who just look at me and say, I don't want to do this anymore. They get discouraged. Hey, we've all been there, haven't we? They get discouraged. They think it can't happen. They think that, oh, it's going to be one of these things. I'm just not going to be able to make it anyway. Might as well just give it up now. Well, what are you going to turn to? What else is there out there? We can ignore all of our problems, but what happens to a person when he ignores all of his problems in life? Does it actually help him any? Absolutely not. The only alternative you have besides destroying your whole life, your whole future, is to pick the thing up and carry it. So we've got a decision to make. Am I going to pick it up and carry it? Or am I just going to put it down and just let my life go to pieces? And what we generally tend to do, if we're most of us as humans, this is how we generally approach it. I'm going to carry it as long as I can. I'm going to put it down for as long as I can until things start unraveling, and then I'm going to pick it up and try to be more responsible, right? Have you ever seen people do that with a budget? I'm going to follow this budget until it gets difficult. Then I'm going to stop living that budget. I'm going to go spend however I want to spend, and then I'll come back to it later when things start unwinding in my life and I can't afford anything anymore. Got to go back to the budget again. So we keep hopping back and forth. As a Christian, we need to be consistent. And that's a growth process. We have to grow into that. Look in Acts chapter 17. Here is the passage that deals with the things that they dealt with. It shows an example of what it meant for them to endure these things. In the first 9 verses, it says, when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. Then Paul, as his custom was, went in to them, and for 3 Sabbaths reasons with them from the Scriptures, explaining and demonstrating that the Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, this Jesus whom I preach to you is the Christ. And some of them were persuaded, and a great multitude of the devout Greeks, not a few of the leading women, joined Paul and Silas. But the Jews who were not persuaded became envious, took some of the evil men from the marketplace, and gathering a mob, set all the city in an uproar, and attacked the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some brethren to the rulers of the city, crying out, these who have turned the world upside down have come here too. Jason has harbored them, and these are all acting contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying there's another king, Jesus. And they troubled the crowd and the rulers of the city when they heard these things. So when they had taken security from Jason and the rest, they let them go. That's all we know about what happened in Thessalonica. But you can read between the lines, can't you? Do you think that since they took security of them, that magically everything was okay? They were okay with Christianity now because, you paid us some money. Everything's going to be hunky-dory now. That's not the way these things work. These people were put through trials and tribulations. We've had difficulties and problems in the church. And speaking as a congregation, every congregation has had troubles and trials. But you know what? I've never seen people with pitchforks walking around picketing the Church of Christ here. Have you? I've never seen anyone in the community. I've seen a few people say some bad things here and there. I've never seen people just go out and mount a campaign against us and try to get me put in prison and try to get you put in prison, and all kinds of things come up. These things could be a lot worse than they are in our lives, I promise you. And sometimes we get to thinking that, man, it can't be any worse. Yeah, please don't say that. Carla has a joke about we should never pray for patience because then we're put through patient times, right? I tell you what, just say it can't get any worse, because it can. And not to be a pessimist, but it probably will at some point, because we grow through that. And if you can't handle where you are, why do you think it's going to be any different when it gets worse? I promise you, Satan is going to do everything within his power to make it worse for you. How do you win? How do you overcome? Hope. By not giving up the vision, not giving up what you see ahead of you, that Jesus is coming back again, that all of this is going to end one day. And here's the kicker. all of this will end, all the pain and suffering you're going through will end, and it will be worth it when it does. It will be worth it. You've got to believe that, or you're not going to make it. That is how serious this is. It's not just saying, hey, just have hope. Just believe in something. It is putting your faith in God. I like to say that hope is faith in the future tense. There's no other way of looking at it. You put your faith in God, that He will get you through, that if you do what He tells you to do, He will find a way, that He will make a path, that He will do things for you and help you through the situation that you could never do by yourself. But you've got to be faithful to Him for that to work, because God does not deal with people and bless people who are not going to be faithful to Him in this sense. So consider what they had and where they were. Look in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 14. It says, "For you, brethren, became imitators of the churches of God who are in Judea in Christ Jesus. For you also suffered the same thing from your own countrymen, just as they did from the Judeans." And here he's reminding them, lest they start feeling sorry for themselves. You're not alone. You know, you're going through a lot of things from your own countrymen, but there was some people that went before you that had the exact same things happen to them. In fact, it's pretty interesting when you think about who is writing this, who used to be called Saul, who was wreaking havoc on the church, persecuting Christians, causing them even to blaspheme God. He knows exactly what he's talking about when he says there's some people that went before you in Judea who went through similar times as well. So here's something for us to remember. Yeah, you got a difficult time. Join the club. There is not a person on earth who's not suffering in some way, or going through trials in some way, or facing trials of some kind. There's not a Christian on earth who is not being, who is not in some way being mistreated, or facing pressures and trials, or at least maybe has suffered from those things. Paul said, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. Sometimes it's easy for us to think that we're by ourselves. Nobody's been through the things I've been through. You know what? You haven't been through the things that I've been through. I haven't been through the things that you've been through. But all of us have been through something, right? All of us have faced challenges. Every single person who is faithful to God will answer the question, do I think it's worth it or not? And the ones that remain are the ones that say yes. Those are the ones who stay. And I've seen it many times where people claim all kinds of things. You go talk to them and, oh, you bet, I want to be a Christian. I want to be faithful to God. And then when push comes to shove, their decisions show what their mouth won't say. Let's not be that way. How do we overcome? I'm not saying it's hopeless for any of us. We've all been there. But the only way to overcome those challenges is to put your faith and hope in God, that He will be there for you and that all of this is worth it. 1 Thessalonians chapter 3 says, "Therefore, when we could no longer endure it, we thought it good to be left in Athens alone, and sent Timothy, our brother and minister of God, and our fellow laborer in the gospel of Christ, to establish you and encourage you concerning the faith." You see, there are people who care. Paul is sending Timothy to make sure that he can bring encouragement to them. This letter is part of what's being said to them, that no one should be shaken by these afflictions, for you yourselves know that we were appointed to this. For in fact, we told you before when we were with you that we would suffer tribulation just as it happened, and you know. For this reason, when I could no longer endure it, I sent to know your faith, lest by some means the tempter had tempted you, and our labor might be in vain. You know, there is a distinct chance that the labor you put into other people will be in vain. There is a distinct chance of that. What do? You put the labor in to other people anyway. There's a time when you're working with people when you're going to be severely disappointed. They're going to make decisions that you want to bang your head against a wall. Why are you going that way? What are you doing? And it feels like there's no reason to keep going. Do it anyway. Because we love. We have hope. We can look forward to the future. And he says here, we couldn't endure it. We had to know, lest by some means the tempter had tempted you. You know, probably all of us have someone in our lives, I hope you do, who is at least in some ways worried about whether or not you're going to be saved. I don't mean they're sitting around worried that you're not going to make it. I mean that they care enough about you to check on you. They care enough about you to say, hey, let's figure out something that we can do to fix this problem that you're in. I hope you have some people like that. As Christians, we should all be that way toward each other. But it's a growth process. Timothy was one of those people to them. He had a great, deep concern for them. Paul had a great, deep concern for them. And it amazes me how he spent just a couple of weeks with them, or 3 weeks with them, and he had such a deep compassion for them because he chose to. It would have been so easy to move from there 3 weeks, he spent 3 weeks with them, to move somewhere else and forget all about them. And all the places he'd been, it'd been a whole lot easier on him too. Because then we have to worry about it. But how does he describe it? He says it's like he's pacing the floor daily, worried about all these people that he's taught because he wants them to make it to heaven. Do we have that same concern for other people? Or is it just about me? Is it just about you? Christianity is about more than us. It's about the people that we can impact and help and do good for. And so we have the patience, we have the endurance, we have the continuing on step by step by step because we have hope of something that we're looking forward to that no one else can claim and no one else can take from us. But you can give it up. And this is why we need to look to the example of those people in Thessalonica and make sure we are following what they did and being the people that they were, just like them. Imitate the good, and don't worry about the bad. This evening, maybe you need to make some changes. It may be that you need to come forward and make a public confession. Maybe you just need to make a decision to do better. If there's any way that we can help you, let us know. We're here for you. Please come as we stand and sing.